What's going on, Broncos country? A&J back, and we're here with some more Broncos talk. And as promised, this is talking about guys I like to see brought in. I mean, obviously, I talked about running it back earlier, but that doesn't mean we can't run it back with some upgrades at certain areas. So that's what we're here to talk about. And right now, what I want to start with is actually the linebacker position, specifically interior linebacker, of course. And I've seen that there are some actually rather interesting names up for free agency this season, namely Bobby Wagner, Levante David, Demario Davis. Although those are guys that are obviously closer to the end of their careers than they are the beginning, which, I mean, it just is what it is. And I'm not trying to say that like I'm exactly a spring chicken, but for me, I would just like to inject a little bit more youth, a little bit more young blood into our defense, especially in the linebacking core. And of course, guys that could actually be stalwarts for years to come, alongside obviously PS2, Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, amongst others. And for me, while I would love to have any of those names in the fold, I see younger guys like a Kenneth Murray, a Caden Ellis, and of course Quincy Williams of the New York Jets. I don't know necessarily that we get any of those guys, but those would guys that I would ideally look at in free agency. And more than anything else, I feel like I've been talking about this for years now. I would absolutely love to see Isaiah Simmons in the fold because to me, Isaiah Simmons is just he's incredible for what he brings to the table. 6'4", about 235, 240, and you can line him up at linebacker and safety. I mean, I think those kind of intangibles speak for themselves. And of course, he fit in pretty well working with the Carolina Panthers. Um, Probably wasn't necessarily as much the standout as you would have thought he would have been coming out of Clemson, but I ideally think that he would actually be a great fit in the Broncos defense. He certainly does an awful lot of things that I think fit the scheme very, very well, especially under Vance Joseph, which hopefully we're keeping him around. Kind of hard to say how that's going to work out, being that he is well, at least at one point was a front runner for the Arizona Cardinals job. Not so much sure about that now, but I'd like to think that if we actually threw him the bag, gave him a blank check, something along those lines to stay as the defensive coordinator, he'd stick around. And after getting to the point to where the Broncos actually got being in the AFC title game, how do you not run it back with Vance? And more importantly, knowing that Bo is actually going to be healthy, it'd be hard for me to believe that he wouldn't want to come back for that particular situation. Same could also be true for a Davis Webb, even though he's the front runner for the Vegas Raiders head coaching job. God forbid that be the case, given that it's the Raiders. But more than anything else, even for the pieces that they do have there, namely Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, I don't know necessarily that I look at that as a situation where I'd want to go in Davis Webb's situation. I feel like also, in all honesty, the Raiders probably could do a little bit better, at least as far as someone with a bit more coaching experience. And we'll see how all of that works out. But just if it's me personally, I'd love to see both Davis Webb and Vance Joseph retained, especially given what was accomplished this season. I have no reason to believe that we can't bring at least one, if not both of those guys back. But time's only going to tell on that one. But of course, again, we got to focus on free agents here. And we're going to move along to talk about wide receivers. And Pro Football Focus is actually really interesting for the fact that they actually have George Pickens as the number one free agent amongst wide receivers, and I think he's number one overall, which talent wise, I don't have any problem with that. But personally speaking, just given the, I don't want to go as far as saying cancer, but just the kind of issues that he brings with him in the locker room, I'm not really ready to welcome him. I don't even want him anywhere near state lines, much less in a Denver Bronco uniform. I mean, that's just where I'm at with that. Maybe you feel differently, but I don't think the talent outweighs the trouble that I feel like will fall if you bring someone like him in. Unlike an Alec Pierce who's right behind him amongst wide receivers, I feel like that dude brings intangibles, true professional, and of course, pretty much a big body just like a George Pickens and is every bit the deep threat. I also like the idea of bringing in a guy like Rashid Shaheed. We'll see if the Seahawks are able to bring him back. And of course, with guys like Kenneth Walker up for free agency, it's going to be interesting to see how all of that works. Romeo Dobbs is definitely a name I would certainly look at. And of course, the one that really intrigued me more than anything else is Tyquan Thornton. I mean, honestly, it'd be nice to see them pick up someone in the draft. I'm not really sure who's available. I think that one we want to leave going towards, draft time to see what's going to be available there. But for me personally, looking at this wide receiver group, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. Cortland Sutton's not a number one anymore. It's hard to say what we get out of a Pat Bryant who was out multiple times with concussion situations. And of course, Troy Franklin to me, I hate to say it, I know that he has that chemistry with Bo, but he's been incredibly hit or miss throughout the season, and actually a lot of last season as well. I mean, just drove me real crazy with a lot of the drops. Hasn't been as bad about that this season, but at the same time, I feel like I'm not sure if I see the development. I would love to think Marvin Mims could be our number one deep threat, but one, he hasn't been utilized enough as that for me to be sure of that, even though he did beat Christian Gonzalez on a huge play that led to the lone touchdown the Broncos were able to score with Cortland Sutton. But it doesn't seem like the Broncos actually rely on him to that degree. And I feel like that's what we're going to have to look at who's available in free agency as well as the draft. I mean, of course, Makai Lemon is one name that comes to mind. Don't know if he'll necessarily be there, but I suppose if we trade up for him, that's a possibility. But it's really, really tricky when it comes to that. But even trickier than that, and it's actually a fitting transition that we're making here. We got to talk about the running back situation. And at least based on what a lot of folks seem to be inclined to believe, all signs lean to be look to be pointing towards a J.K. Dobbins return, which I'm actually here for. I love J.K. I love what he does. Injury um, again, much like a Drake Greenlaw, if we could get 13, 14 games out of him, I would certainly love that. Of course, the Liz Frank injury being what it was, you'd like to think, had that not been the case, how do we know if he actually would have avoided injury at any point? But the noticeable difference between having him out there versus relying on RJ Harvey, Jaleel McLaughlin, and even Tyler Bidet to some degree, I don't know that it's necessarily worked out how we needed it, especially with a guy like Jalil, who personally I would love to still have around, but of course he's a restricted free agent. I don't know necessarily that we match any offer that's made to him, but I'm not in that front office. Only time will really tell on that one. What I will say is that if nothing else, along with bringing a JK back, I would love to see the Broncos look into some guys that are available in free agency. I know Rico Dowdle is someone that I mentioned in the previous video. I would certainly like to see him be brought along into the fold, even though some folks don't know if he's necessarily a scheme fit. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Obviously, Kenneth Walker would be a big name, but I think Seattle keeps him around. I know a lot of people are big on Brees Hall. I don't know if that's realistic, especially given that the asking price is probably going to be more than what the Broncos are looking to pay. But one name that I do see in free agency that I would love to have, and I feel like would be, if not a compliment, maybe even a potential as time goes by, would be Tyler Algier from the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, again, big body, 5'11", 6 foot, 220 pounds. Who's saying no to that? And he's 25 years old. I mean, of course, needless to say, that's not too far from that particular point where the running back life starts coming to an end, but I feel like Algier's done a really good job staying healthy. He's obviously someone I certainly like as far as bringing in a free agent. If not, he'd probably be my number one free agent on the board personally. But that's just me. And then of course I like guys in the draft, guys like Penn State's Katron Allen and even Nicholas Singleton, who I feel like are realistic prospects. I messed up his name earlier, Jadarian Price. I called him Jonathan for some reason. He'd be someone I'd love to have fall to us, but I don't know necessarily that he does, especially with running back needy teams like the Cardinals and the Chiefs sitting in a position where, again, even if we trade up, I feel like that needs to be for a wide receiver. At least someone in that particular category who could actually come in and develop into being a number one, if not be the number one right away, much like a Jackson Smith and Jigba has this for the Seahawks. And that's obviously paying off. They're going to the Super Bowl at this point. But for me, again, guys like that, and I even like a guy like Roman Hemby and Caitlin Black out of Indiana. Those are guys I certainly would love to see in a Broncos uniform. And realistically, it's just a matter of making upgrades in the right areas. And to me, those are the areas that I'm looking at. I know you could probably argue tight end and safety as well, which I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. Maybe I do a video talking about that as well. But for me, that is what I would like to see as far as what the Broncos could do as far as adding to the offense and maybe even the defense as well, just in terms of depth, just depending on what we wind up losing in free agency. But again, that's one where only time can tell, and we'll see how all that works out in the long run. Either way, I'll leave it at that. Let me know what y'all think down below. Of course, like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy the content, definitely hit that notification bell. And that's really all I got for you for now. So this has been your time with A and J, and I appreciate you spending it with me.